brothers and sisters, with a faint glow that barely lit the space around her. The other fireflies didn't seem to notice. They were too busy soaring, twirling, and flashing their lights across the enchanted woods. Every night, the fireflies filled the air like scattered stars, flickering in playful patterns as they zipped between the trees. They raced between branches, looped through the thick summer air, and pulsed their lights in secret codes only they understood. But Luma didn't play. Instead, she sat on a low-hanging branch staring at the giant's lantern, a golden flame that never flickered, never dimmed, never failed. The animals relied on it. The mice used it to return to their burrows. The owls used it to find their way through the trees. The foxes watched its glow flicker as they trotted along hidden paths. Even the ancient oaks seemed to lean toward it. Luma admired it, envied it. She wanted to shine like that, steady, bright, and important. No matter how hard she tried, her glow was always faint, flickering softly like a candle about to go out. One evening, as she gazed at the lantern lost in thought, a gray moth fluttered beside her. His wings were frayed at the edges, dull and dusty, but he moved smoothly through the air, unbothered by the fact that he had no glow at all. Unlike the fireflies, he had never needed light to find his way. "You're staring at it again," the moth observed. Luma kept her eyes on the lantern. "I want to shine like that." The moth flopped lazily, letting the warm night air carry him in small circles. "That's impossible," he said. "The lantern was made by a giant. It's special." He landed beside her. "You're just a firefly." Luma's glow dimmed. She looked down at herself, at the faint shimmer of her tiny light, and then back at the lantern. Compared to its golden flame, she was nothing. Maybe the moth was right. Maybe some lights were just meant to shine brighter than others. The next night, just as the sky dipped into a deep indigo, an owl landed beside Luma as she was lying on a branch. Luma had seen him before, soaring silently through the trees, watching the world below with quiet patience, but he never spoke to her until now. "Do you know its story?" he asked, looking at the lantern. Luma shook her head. The owl ruffled his feathers, settling into a more comfortable position. "A long time ago, before you or I were here, before the trees grew as tall as they are now, a giant lived in this forest for a little while. He was kind and strong, larger than anything you could imagine. His footsteps shook the earth, but he never crushed the smallest creature beneath him." Luma closed her tiny wings, picturing it, a great towering figure moving gently among the trees, lifting fallen branches, cradling small animals in his massive hands. But one day, the owl continued, he had to leave. No one knows why. Some say he was called away to build mountains in the distance. Others whisper that he faded into the wind, watching over the forest in a different way. Luma's glow flickered. Did the forest miss him? "Very much," the owl said. The trees swayed in mourning, the rivers ran slower, and the animals wandered without direction. But before he left, the owl continued, his voice softer now. He placed the lantern in the tallest tree, high above the forest floor, where no storm could reach it. Luma looked up at it, swinging gently in the night breeze. He said it would shine forever, the owl went on, keeping the forest safe as shivered. It never stormed in the Enchanted Woods. Not like this. A deep rumble rolled throughout the air, slow at first, stretching long like a breath being drawn from the earth itself. It started as a whisper beneath the trees, growing louder, curling around the trunks, a sound that didn't belong, like a distant thunder in a place that had never known it before. The fireflies stopped playing, the trees stopped swaying, the world was listening. Then, lightning, a jagged white hot streak ripped across the sky so bright, it turned the forest to silver for a single, frozen moment. Luma looked around, burrowed under some leaves, terrified, and then the light vanished, and the darkness returned deeper than before. The thunder followed, crackling through the air like a great tree snapping in two. It didn't just shake the sky. It rattled the ground, sent vibrations through the roots beneath the earth, made the leaves tremble even before the wind reached them. Luma huddled beneath a broad leaf, her wings pulled tight against her body. This wasn't just a storm. Something was wrong. Then she saw it. The giant's lantern flickered. Luma's tiny heart pounded. It had never flickered before. She had watched it every night, had memorized the way its golden glow stretched throughout the forest. But now, as the wind screamed through the trees and the rain lashed against its glass, the flame inside shuddered. Luma's glow flickered with it, as if she could feel it struggling to stay alive. The great lantern swung wildly on its branch, its chains creaking under the strain, the rain running down its glass in frantic winding paths. Another flash of white light, then the thunder, louder than ever before, and with it, the final blow of the wind, a gust so strong that the branches bent nearly to breaking. The lantern rocked violently, its golden glow shrinking, fighting against the storm, fighting to hold on. And then, just like that, the flame was gone. Just gone. A single breath of darkness spread, and the Enchanted Woods plunged into the night. Luma blinked, trying to adjust, but there was nothing to adjust to. There was no soft glow from the lantern, no light to push the shadows. Everything had changed. Luma's tiny glow flickered uselessly against the thick shadows pressing from all sides. She had never seen the forest like this before. No one had. Because the giant's lantern had never gone out. Not once. Not ever. Luma hovered in one place. The air felt different now. The woods had never been silent like this. But then a sound, a tiny frantic rustle, broke through the stillness. A mouse peeked from its burrow, its tiny nose twitching in the cold air. Sensing something was wrong, it darted back underground. Even the trees were different in the absence of light, as if they were haunted strangers. The fireflies above Luma had stopped playing. She looked around. If there were travelers out there, someone searching for their way home, they wouldn't find it. A tiny voice broke the silence. "What do we do?" a young firefly whispered. But no one answered. Luma's heart pounded. This wasn't how the woods were supposed to be. The giant's lantern was supposed to stay lit forever. It was the forest's guide, its protector, its heart. And for the first time, the Enchanted Woods was